At Impact 100 Garden State, we believe in the power of women coming together, not just to give, but to lead, to listen, and to elevate conversations that matter. Today's conversation reflects something powerful because it takes courage to bring forward topics that are not always easy, but are incredibly important. And time and again, it is women who step forward with that courage. Conversations like this don't just happen. Finding a moderator who could thoughtfully guide a discussion on leadership, service, and the realities of public life, and pairing that with a panel of women willing to be open and share their journeys, that's the magic that makes this moment possible.
Happy. Now, raise your hands if you knew what today is, besides St. Joseph's Day, if you celebrate. I have a house full of Joes, so it's a big day. Women in Public Office Day. Did you know that was today, March 19th? No one knew that, right? So when this event was booked, we found out after. So it's totally in the stars that we're all meant to be here today. And I'm not joking. I can't think of just a more crazy, or for lack of a better word, position to put yourself in than politics, because you have to have the thickest skin. You have to be the most organized. You have to have the most caring heart at the end of the day to put yourself out there to make such a difference. So I can't wait to dive into these conversations today. So I'm going to ask, though, each panelist to introduce themselves, briefly give a little bio, and why they are an Impact 100 member, because the cool thing is all 5 of us are Impact 100 members. So we want to definitely give Celeste and everyone at Impact 100 major love. So the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you very much. So my name is Marissa Sweeney. I wear a few hats. Oh, thank you. I wear a few different hats. So I'm a doctor of clinical nutrition and a registered dietitian. I own, it's called Be Well Integrative Health Services, but most people just know it as Be Well. And it's headquartered in Morristown. As you're going around the green, this is the best way to describe it. As you're going around the green, everybody wants to make that right to take you by the famished frog. You know what I'm talking about? Don't make that right. You just go straight, and I'm like right there before you hit McCullough. And we're a women's health and wellness center. So it's a group of dietitians, mental health providers, we have physicians, there's pelvic floor physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, there's a yoga and Pilates studio. It's a bunch of licensed healthcare providers that specialize in women's health to come together and provide a very research and evidence-based, holistic approach to women's healthcare, which there's more women in this world than there are men in this state, in this country, in this world. And we're highly and greatly underserved in the medical community in terms of just from the very sheer research dollars that go into women's health every year. So that was a big inspiration for making it. And I also, and honestly, this is like a side hustle that turned into its own full-time job, but I own the New Jersey Vegan Food Festival. And we do it in Asbury Park, we've done it in Atlantic City, we've done it in the Meadowlands, we do it in Montclair, and we're going on our 10th year now. And it's really a small business incubator. I have a big heart for small businesses because I'm a small business owner myself, in which we really foster and handhold plant-based small businesses to have them grow. And I also just recently got elected to the New Jersey Assembly in the 25th District, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you. And then expand on why I ran, is that right?
Oh, no, why you're an Impact 100 member.
Oh, why I'm an Impact 100 member. So I spoke with Lee, I spoke with Joanne. There's a lot of people in this room. I find like Morristown's, I was just saying, everybody in Morristown is about a degree or two of separation away from each other if you don't know each other. So there's a lot of women in this room that I already knew, and I knew the work that they do in their professional lives. And I thought, well, what's really bringing everybody together here? And the mission of Impact 100 just made absolute perfect sense for me to want to be a part of it, you know? When you have abundance in your life, you make the table bigger, and you invite other people, and you hand out that to those that need it, that are also looking for that boost, that help to be able to give them the tools to be better and to make our community better, and it's giving back, and the mission is just fantastic. So that's why I joined.
Thank you. Aura?
Hello, everyone. I'm so proud of everyone knows what district they're in, the number and everything. That's impressive. One of my passions is civic education, actually, but I won't quiz you at the end. My name's Aura Dunn. Aura, light, yes. I was a flower child. My parents were hippies. I'm the oldest, so they experimented with the name on me. But boy, and my mother tells me to this day, see, I had big plans for you. So I usually end with my proudest responsibility, but I'll start with that. I'm the mom of 3 children. I have 2 girls and a boy, my baby, who just entered the Merchant Marine Academy and is also a sworn-in naval reservist. So that's I'm proud to say I'm a Blue Star mom, and this time right now gives it a very different feeling for sure. Looking through things with a very different set of eyes. I have served in the legislature for 6 years. And I do liken politics, you use the word crazy, I'll say dog years. So does that make me 42 years old in politics? But no, my first time, this is the first office I've ever served in, the first elected office. But I got my start on Capitol Hill many moons ago, worked on the United States Senate Appropriations Committee on Education Policy. Which brought me to work for, that's when I started my family, and as much as the environment on Capitol Hill said they were supportive and wanted to do what they can for young families and particularly women, I was actually on a committee that brought lactation sites to the U.S. Senate. But when your child is in childcare for 13 hours straight, I kind of had a different perspective on things, and so left Capitol Hill to go into the private sector, where I worked and represented Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Workshop, Jumpstart for Young Children. So really continued with the education advocacy. And if you were to tell me you'd be an assemblywoman in 20 years for the state of New Jersey, I would have said, I don't think so. Would maybe have had a chuckle over that. But isn't it interesting how life is often a circle? And we talk about that, right? With women, our careers are not always the linear ladder, because we sometimes get off that ladder to care for others. We're the caretakers of our family. So I ended up coming to New Jersey, feeling a little displaced. It was more for my husband's career. And mind you, I grew up in New York City, so it was a little bit closer. But I tell my kids all the time, Morris County is a little bit more like where Dad grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, than Brooklyn, New York. But yeah, I got a call from Congressman Frelinghuysen's office, and it's kind of cool that I'm here today in the Frelinghuysen Arboretum, saying, we heard you're in New Jersey. We heard you live in the district. Any interest in serving as a district director? And there was a long pause. And then the chief of staff on the other line said, don't worry, it's not like Washington. You'll be able to, you'll have a life, and you're a 15-minute drive to office. And I said, you regret more what you didn't do in life than what you did. So I said, what do I have to lose? And basically kind of got back on that circle there and became the district director for Congressman Frelinghuysen, close to 1 million residents. So I made myself available for almost 1 million residents each day in the district. And it really, I feel in many ways, completed that circle of public policy, right? The legislation, the policy making, and then this was what we call the retail side, the constituent services. Right before then, I did, because I was looking for, I said I felt displaced, right? So I got a certification in mediation for the state of New Jersey. And I also went on to work for Au Pair in America. I became a counselor, community counselor, but the real role was a liaison between the host families and the au pairs who are here. Young women here from another country, either a year or two, on cultural exchange visas. And just looking back, I think, wow, that mediation certificate and then being a liaison for Au Pair in America really prepared me for the next. And I'd say the most important credential I have is that mediation certificate down in Trenton. So I know we'll dive in. And
yeah, we're going to dive in, but when did you become an Impact 100 member?
I want to say 3 years ago. And why? The why. Especially given my experience, what breaks my heart, and I just finished serving on the Budget Committee for the last 4 years. When you already, as much as the system, there's a process, and you feel there's fairness, and I always want to say needs more transparency. But you still see the disadvantages in many of the under-resourced organizations that are doing great work, but they just can't get in the game, right? And the power of the Garden State Impact 100, or I know there's various chapters throughout the state that through the collective to give maybe that smaller nonprofit that doesn't neatly fit in a box, right, for public funding or other even for private funding, to give that organization a shot. So that was what I wanted to get behind. I've sponsored a child through the Fresh Air Fund since he was 6 years old till he was 16, and just the power of these nonprofit organizations. And his grandmother said to me, out of all my grandchildren, there was one that went through the Fresh Air Fund program, and he's also the only one that got a college degree. So it's the power. So thank you, the power of us. And I always like to say, it usually starts with about 5 women around the kitchen table.
My turn. I've never been mic'd before. This is a unique experience. I am in my 8th year as mayor in Bernardsville. I am the first woman elected mayor in Bernardsville. And I always say that's really great news that we finally have a mayor that's a woman, but it's also kind of sad that it took that long to get a woman to be mayor. I am a baby boomer. Tomorrow is my 76th birthday. So when I was in high school, girls had 5 choices. You could be a nurse, a teacher, a secretary, an airline stewardess, and if you were really kind of sharp, maybe a buyer in Macy's. Those were kind of our career choices. So when I look at now, when I see all these young people and the amazing choices you all have now, we've come a long way, baby. So I am the first. My parents are first-generation Italian and Irish immigrants. I am the only one in my family to get a college degree, and I didn't get it till I was 40. Late bloomer, and it was when my kids were in school, and I went back to college to finish my degree. I had chosen secretary as one of my 5. And I was going to go to Catherine Gibbs, because that was, anybody remember Catherine Gibbs? Okay. And the guidance counselor said, your grades are too good, go to the County College of Morris. They had just opened, and you can get a 2-year degree at least. And I actually have an associate's degree in secretarial science. That was actually a course. They've now changed it to business. They call it business, but it was secretarial science. And I went to work in publishing for Silver Burdett. Anybody remember Silver Burdett? They used to do school textbooks. And it was, those of you that watch Mad Men, it was like that when I first went to work in an office. I was always kind of tactfully pushing back the passes from my boss's boss. There was no harassment person to talk to. There was no human resources to report those things to. We couldn't wear pants. Ha! You had to have a dress all the time. We kind of petitioned to be able to wear pants, and they said the only way we'll let you wear pants is if the jacket covers your rear end. That was the pantsuit had to come over your rear end. So I have two sons, one 51, one 48. They live in California. And I went back to school, got my degree in sociology, very useful. And I ended up being working in a school system, and then I became the school business administrator because the man I worked for said, you know, you could do this job. And I think part of my generation is always minimizing what we're capable of. You know, just never thinking that we can do more. And this, the person I worked for saw that in me and said, you know, you could do this. Go get certified, which I did. And I became the school business administrator in Harding, and then I went on to Chester. I've missed a part here. In the 90s, I was on the council for 2 terms, mainly because I did not. We wanted to put a playground in town, and we went to the council, and these very distinguished men did a little, don't you worry your pretty little heads, you know, we can run this town. So I started a nonprofit called Citizens for a Better Burnsville, and we built a community-built playground, which they were not happy about, that we went off and did this on our own. And then I realized, I said, you know, the only way I'm going to be able to make anything different is to run. And then you had to be invited to run for council. So I ran offline, and I actually won, which surprised me. And I spent 2 terms on council in the 90s. So after I retired from Chester, I decided, you know, I'd like to get back involved. And I was going to run for council, and they already had 2 candidates. So I said, yeah, maybe next year. And then the person who was running for mayor switched parties at the last minute. And they called me up and said, we have nobody, would you run for mayor? So I said, yeah, okay, and I won, which really surprised me. So here I am. And why the why of Impact, I think, you know, we all probably see this. There's a lot of negative in the world. And, you know, when you're dealing with your residents and, you know, people are complaining and over things that probably aren't worth complaining about, and then you see the good work that these agencies that apply to us are doing, it is just so refreshing, uplifting to know that there are hundreds of organizations out there doing incredible work, just really making a difference in the world. And it's just so positive that for me, it's the balance. It gives me the balance. So that's my story.
Hello, everybody. I am Shelley Brindle. I'm the only former mayor here. My 8 years as mayor of Westfield ended in December when I decided not to seek a 3rd term for reasons I can talk about later. But I'll try to give you a little bit of why behind what's in the bio, because I'm sure you probably read it. But I had been a 27-year career at HBO, where I was the first woman in the C-suite. Decided to retire early to pursue a career in what I thought was going to be something philanthropic. Was mad, and then I kind of woke up. I'd never really been involved in my town because my world was really involved in commuting to New York 5 days a week, which is what you did back then with 3 kids at home. And I realized, I was like, oh my God, what happened to the state of our downtown? As hopefully many of you have been to Westfield. It's a beautiful historic town. We had vacancies everywhere. I like to tell people, we had a Halloween pop-up store in town. And when that happens, you know things are not great. So I started delving into local politics and who was running the town. It was run by the same circle of men for decades that handed it off to one another. So I ran against a 3-term incumbent. Nobody thought we had a chance. They had a little slate of people, and we all won by a landslide, took control over the council and got to work. And I'm really proud of what we had done. I am also the first female mayor in Westfield. Same reaction as you. What on earth took it so long? But it was really interesting for me coming from the private sector where I led a large P&L and thinking like, oh sure, this will be nothing. Running for office and running office was quite frankly the hardest thing I've ever done, and we can talk about that. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, so for me, my husband likes to remind me, I met him in college in Virginia. Living in New Jersey was never in the cards, much less being the mayor of a town. My dad was in the military. He was killed in Vietnam as an Air Force pilot. So I grew up with only women in my house, my mom and my 2 older sisters, and I think that explains why I was the first female in HBO C-suite ever, and I was the first female mayor. And for me, when there are no gender roles assigned to you from a very young age, you don't have them as an adult either. And so I've been a passionate advocate for women leaders through my business career. And as mayor, I was very proud of how we turned in the representation of women on all our boards and councils. It was 20%, it was 60% when I left. And I'm the vice chair of an organization in New York called Women in America, and it's executive women's mentoring organization to get women in positions of influence in business. So I'm incredibly proud to be here and to say why I'm at Impact. I was actually referred to Impact and became aware of it through former Summit Mayor Nora Radist. And she introduced me to France, wherever she may be. And I tell you, France was very kind to come to my office in Westfield. Literally, it took one, she had me at hello, I'll tell you that. So love the organization, love the impact and the power of this organization, and incredibly proud to be here today. So thank you.
And very quickly, how I became an Impact 100 member, I was driving on Route 80 and I saw a billboard. So as a TV host, and it worked, yes. As a TV host, I have my eyes peeled all the time for content, right? Because I have to, it's a 24/7 channel, so we have a lot of shows we have to fill. You know, and you know. Maybe we could do a full circle and you guys could work with us one day. Anyway, so I reached out because I wanted Celeste to be on the show, and I immediately just fell in love with the concept and everything that you do, and you make giving back so easy, especially when you're busy, but so impactful, no pun intended. So I'm just so happy the billboard on Route 80 brought us together. Yes. The power of marketing. So, Shelley, I'm going to start with you, because the next question I had is for all of you guys. When did you get the bug, though? Like, it's one thing that people put these ideas in your head, but you have businesses, you have children, you have jobs, you have very full lives already. So I want to start with you, because I want you to describe how that was to integrate all of that into your life. But then, because I think there's also a very important lesson here, when you knew it was also time to step down.
2 great questions. I never had a bug to run for office. But I did have a big problem I wanted to solve. And I think I mentioned I was very frustrated about our downtown, very worried about our downtown, and I, started giving all these suggestions to people based on my private sector experience about things that they should do. And then eventually someone said, well, why don't you run for mayor? And I'm like, oh, no, I don't know. I always say, my high school daughter at the time said, what I always said to them, you can never rely on other people to do the work you don't want to do. And I tell that to all the Girl Scouts that have come through the office. And so, and as an aside, because we're all women except for some of us in the room, they already had a mayoral candidate for mayor, and I was going to run for council because I thought that would be easy peasy. And the guy they kicked him off because they found he had a big porn a habit on Twitter. So it's such a cliche, isn't it? So 2 weeks before petitions were due, they looked at me and said, will you run for mayor? And I'm like, it wasn't what I do. And once again, my daughter, out of the mouth of babe, said, Mom, you always tell us about making a difference, and just by running, you're going to make a difference. And so you want to say, shut your mouth. So anyway. And honestly, quite frankly, going back to women, and I think someone made the comment about stepping up, I am a much better mayor than I would have been a council person, especially if he had been the mayor. And sometimes, we don't raise our hands enough to do the work because you feel you're not qualified, or you've never done it, or whatever it may be. And so sometimes we end up being forced into situations. It's quite a fact, actually, by a lot of women CEOs become CEOs when there's major problems, and they, okay, no, now we'll bring her in to fix it. So, so that was really what inspired me, and why I'm not running again is because I had a very specific, I had a whole list of things I wanted to serve. And quite frankly, when I got into office, I thought it was just the downtown, but we were still running like it was the 1950s. Like, I'm thinking I'm going to bring all this tech-forward innovation from my HBO days, and I go in and realize they're in a GoDaddy email platform. I'm like, oh my God. So, so I had a whole list of things I wanted to solve about innovation and transparency and budget and all this kind of stuff. And when it was my term, second term was ending, and I'd gotten questions about running the third term, I went back and looked at why did I run in the first place, and I checked all those boxes. And I said, you know what? It's time to hand it on to a new generation of leaders. And I'll just leave it with this. When I left HBO early, to a lot of people, my CFO said to me, it's always better to leave a year too early than a year too late. And I've never forgotten it. And I thought the same thing when it came for mayor. So hopefully I can do something combining my private and public sector experience to continue to move forward the public good. So.
Mary Jane.
So
when did you get the bug and put it into motion? You know, we learned a little bit about your stories, but like I said, you all have very full lives, and this adds a whole other layer to that. So how did you integrate it into your life and go after office?
I always say whenever I find time to clean closets, I need to sign up for something else. You know? I am not artsy craftsy, and I'm not all that domestic, but I'm really good at organizing things. I'm great at getting people to work together, and it seems like I have always been, even as a kid, the one who gets things moving and starts things up. And I feel like, and I've always felt this way, that, you know, we have a responsibility to make things better. Everyone needs to contribute. And if everyone did, just think how great things would be. You know, if everyone stepped up and did a little bit, you know, it would make such a difference. So, you know, I'm always the responsible one. You know, people go, oh, Mary Jane, she's always responsible and dependable. And that used to bother me that people said that. But, you know, that's kind of my superpower. You know, that's what I'm good at. And I felt like, as I mentioned before, you know, there was this group of men who just wanted to do things their way and weren't listening. And I think, you know, what women are good at, we're good listeners. And part of being in government, I mean, the most important part is listening. You know, knowing what people want, knowing what their problems are. And I love to talk to people. I love to listen to what their ideas are. I love, you know, the variety we have in town. So I just felt like, you know, I needed to do something. I needed to get in there and try and do something. And the one thing I discovered is when you're in government, things move very slowly. Unbelievably slowly. So I thought, you know, kind of like you, well, here's the things I want to get done, and there's still stuff hanging out there, you know, that dealing with, you know, like New Jersey Transit and DOT and some of these projects that just drag. So I've signed up to run again for another term. So I feel like there's more I can do, there's more I can contribute, and no one else offered to take my place. So. I'm in it to keep. Yes.
Amazing, amazing.
So I wouldn't call it a bug for me. I really didn't have the bug. I actually, when I go and talk to students, I show them my high school yearbook picture with the 80s hair, and underneath it says child psychologist, actually, of what I wanted to do. And interestingly enough, I'm 2 rows above Hakeem Jeffries in my graduating class. So his did say lawyer, so I guess he got closer. So really for me, you know, obviously focused on child well-being. I come from I used to get offended by the word, but I guess it was called a broken home back then. My mom had me when she was 19. My dad had just returned from Vietnam. So Shelley, thank you for your father's service, and it hit me, like I was fortunate enough that Dad still came home. Didn't come home in one piece, but he was home. And that fighter in him probably is what helped me take on things that typically girls wouldn't take on. And he'd father of 3 girls. I'd say, Dad, you needed a son. He's like, no, I didn't. There's nothing that you can't do that a boy can do. So yes, I feel like service has always kind of been in my heart. And when I was working and really didn't see myself being in office because that was maybe for other people, truly. I didn't come from a political family. My maiden name is Kenny. I used to say, I wish it could be a Kennedy. But no, I was a Kenny, and I actually remember even in middle school, the kids that ran for student government, right? They had the moms in the PTA. So you already saw that, and the one kid really bullied me. I went to school on Halloween, which most kids cut out. Not when your father's, but at that time, let's see. So he returned he's a Marine, then went into the police force. He wasn't a school teacher yet. So yeah, I'm like, you weren't cutting out of school. I remember getting bullied and being made fun of for going to school on Halloween and got egged. Yeah, and then I thought, this is the PTA president's kid? I'm going to run for treasurer. I didn't win, but I lost by 2 votes. And the principal had said that was the closest election they've ever had. So maybe I put that away, and then, but yeah, just continued. I studied sociology as well, so it does still exist as a major. But when I was in the congressional office, and my boss announced his retirement, and I was thinking, I just kind of got back into things, right? And like, well, now what am I going to do? And I really, what was kind of going on in the political environment, I felt like I need to. I was brought here. I was brought here for a reason, and and my daughters even questioned me. They're like, "Mom, you're going to run for office now." I'm like, "You've been so good. You've been, you could stay under the radar." Because really, right? We're used to being behind the scenes, right? Getting all the work done without the scrutiny or the attention, and so my daughters who were in high school at that time, I said, yeah, I think it's really, it's important. And I looked at, just my experience and my abilities. Why not, right? Why couldn't it be me? But listen, right away I was told, it can't be you. What nerve does she have to run? Don't you know there are others that are in line? You like to start off real big, huh? You're a little big for your britches, literally the big for your. I'm like, really? We're still saying that? And it was hard, and I lost first time I ran again, and I had 11,000 votes, and I remember someone saying to me, 11,000 people came out to vote for you. That means something. And when women, there is research that shows when women run for office and they lose, they're less likely to return and run again. And another thing we don't do, I don't typically see, let's go district shopping. Okay, I'm gonna, oh, there's an opening here, I'll go set up an apartment here or something to, men just think they, it's like, yeah, because. So I went back and I ran again, and I actually broke a New Jersey record with the most votes in an assembly race ever in New Jersey's history. So I love telling that story. But did I fully answer your question? All right. All right.
I kind of got lost when you said Kennedy, though, because it made me think of Love Story, because now there's a whole new generation of people falling in love with the Kennedys now because of that. You guys all know what I'm talking about? And raise your hand if you're obsessed like I am. I'm obsessed. So well done. But yeah, you did awesome. Yeah. Okay. Your turn.
All right, thank you.
When did you get the bug? I mean, you have all these businesses. I can't wait to hear your answer.
So I got to tell you, it was said that, I don't know if I got the actual political bug necessarily. The bug that really bit me was the altruism bug, absolutely. Even though I've always had, my two businesses for the past decade plus, I've always been on the board of nonprofits, and I've always been part of, you just kind of find yourself in public policy teams now, and I'm a dietitian, so food insecurity is a big passion of mine. And I started that Women's Health and Wellness Center because the NIH, the National Institute of Health, released a report in 2013 that said only 9.7% of their budget was allocated to women's health. So this is PCOS, postpartum depression, endometriosis, menopause. We don't know anything about it, in comparison to some of the other diagnoses that are out there that have decades of literature behind it. So I've always been a strong believer in there's two things that have to come together if you want a lasting, sustainable, effective change. And that's you have your research and evidence-based plan, and then you got to get out there and do it and make sure and follow through, make sure it gets done. And a lot of the nonprofits that I've been on the boards of, or contracted with, or partnered or volunteered in some sort of way, over the years, the ones that I've really kind of stuck with, I think execute this formula really, really well of they have the research and evidence-based plan and they get it done. And I'm sure as you sit, you might think of maybe an effort or an organization or whatever that maybe you've been part of over the years that might do one of those things really well, and the other one maybe kind of falls flat, and then it doesn't really get anywhere, right? So as I'm starting to become just part of the public policy teams of some of these nonprofits, one in particular I was the president of the New Jersey Dietetic Association, which is the big professional organization for all the nutrition professionals in New Jersey. We're following food insecurity bills, and I also was doing a specialty food show, the Veg Fest, down in Atlantic City, which is a food desert. And I'm asking people to come in and pay a premium ticket price to eat Instagrammable food, while just down the block, people don't have access to a grocery store. I'm like, what am I doing here? So I wanted to be part of the solution. Those two things had to come together. So we started presenting the research and evidence-based plans to legislators. I found myself going to Trenton and testifying in front of the Assembly, in front of the Senate, meeting with legislators on the side, literally putting together that research and evidence-based plan, and then having it fall on deaf ears. And I just got so frustrated with not being part of the doing. I want to be part of the doing. I've always been part of the doing. I have two small businesses that would love more of my time. I'm in this because my heart is in this all the way. I want to be part of the solutions. So I decided when I saw this assembly opportunity that was presented to me, I was like, I think it was never in somebody mentioned it was never in your career bingo card. Politics were never in my career bingo card. But I was like, I think I might do this. And I can't tell you the amount of people that told me I was out of my mind. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Well, first of all, where are you even going to find the time to do this? And but if your heart's in it, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And it took a lot of thinking. It took a lot of, and my husband has always been one of the most supportive people in this world. And he's like, you got to do this. And I was like, okay. But yeah, there was a lot of, and I think probably this can be applied to any risk that you might take in your life, anything that you kind of try for. It's seemingly the people that you love and the people that love you, and I don't think it comes from a place of malice, that say things that kind of chip away a little bit at your own confidence in your ability to do it, you know? Like people that I really valued their opinion are like, oh, Democrats haven't won since 1974 in Morris County. What are you doing? What are you doing? My own mom is like, are you sure you want to do this? This is a little crazy. And I understand where it's coming from. Like it's people in a way like trying to protect me, but you almost have to pick and choose the advice that you heed and take to heart, almost like you choose what you're going to wear in the morning. Which is not an easy thing to navigate. So I did it. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that the bug bit me, but it just felt like the absolute natural next step. And I just couldn't be more honored to really be here. I love it.
I really love that we got to know you all as people. And we got to know your why and just your backgrounds, and I think we all got a good sense of who everyone is on stage, right? Give them a round of applause. Now, let's talk about the challenges being in office. So we know why you ran. We saw how you won. Now you're in, and I'll start with you. So now you're on the other side, getting things presented to you. You're dealing with men that have been there for many, many years, decades. You know, you're in a man's world when you're in politics, let's be straight, right? Talk about how you navigate the challenges while in office.
So I haven't been here long, so I just got elected in November. So I think I likely haven't been here long enough to feel likely the worst of it. You know, I'm sure that's ahead of me, I have no doubt. But again, I think it goes back to the little example that I gave earlier, is that people are going to say things to you whether you want it or not. It's going to be unsolicited. It's going to be people that you love saying things that are unsolicited. It's going to be people that you don't have a relationship with at all, just chipping away at your ego. And you really do have to pick and choose what of this you're actually really going to take in and hang on to. Like you really have to, as it was said, you really have to have a thick skin. Like in politics, it's a blood sport, you know? So you kind of have to be ready for that. And you have to, and even with the election, you have to make your peace with losing. It's before you even get into it. And you have to make your peace with the fact that it's going to be a struggle 100% of the time. And that's a struggle that I just chose to take on. So, and I think whether you're in politics or it doesn't matter what industry you're in, like there's going to be some sort of sexism, there's going to be some sort of misogyny that you deal with. And you can choose to let it slow you down. Like you can choose to let it cripple you even. Or you can choose to let it roll off your back and keep on keeping on. That actually has been my mantra for the past 15 years, as simple as it is. Keep on keeping on. Love it.
Okay, let's unpack this, right? Women in a man's world, but especially politics, yeah. For sure, right? And wait, I just gotta, I know today's a perfect day, it's Women in Public Service Day, but this headline was just this week. Women of New Jersey, the Garden State needs you in government. Right, we've seen actually where we made some great strides in terms of representation, and on both sides of the aisle, we've really taken several steps back. Yes, we have a woman governor, which is great, and we're seeing Governor Sherrill build her cabinet, and there are women in those leadership positions that have never been in them before, so there's progress. I remember as a little girl saying to my mom, because I mentioned earlier I was a flower child, she was a member of the La Leche League and all that, and I said, come on, Mom. I mean, she's like, I hate to tell you, it's not revolution, it's evolution. And I'm like, this evolution's got to pick up a little bit here. But I mean, just think about the representation in the New Jersey legislature, again, on both sides. Women are just about 30% of representing, that's out of 120 members. I am one of three, that's right, 3 Republican women in the Assembly out of 80 members. Wow. There are a total of 5 Republican women in the New Jersey legislature, which means we represent about 4%. Is that reflective of our electorate? So yeah, so I feel like, so you have that, right? You have that, you already feel like you're kind of going against the tide. And then we have, it's just a very egocentric field for sure.
Like
I mean,
media.
what's that?
Like media.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that a little bit in our preparation. Where there's a lot of parallels, right, with Hollywood and politics. I don't think it should be. And unfortunately, we do see more of that in politics, where it becomes like, are we looking to be entertained, or are we looking to be served and led by the people we put in office? And you see the performances. And again, I think, I know this is fully on record, and it's going to be streamed and everything, but I will say that men are a lot more comfortable in even doing the, what do we say, but the, I don't want to call it theater, but a little bit more bolder in terms of their rhetoric, right, what we see on the floor. I know, Marissa, you and I haven't been on the floor yet, but we've got, Monday, we've got our voting session, first voting session together. Yeah. So we'll see it. And did you have another half of the question of how do I contend with it? How
do you deal with that? Like Monday is going to be brutal. Sean back there, he's going to be there covering it. It's going to be, there's a lot on the table right now. So how do you handle just that pressure cooker and the challenges and the roadblocks that you're faced?
Well, and I always feel like, I remember when I first got into office, and of course, since I'm the assembly member, I would always speak after the more senior members, so that's the state senator or if the congressperson is there. And after speaking, I'd say, I feel like I'm coloring outside the lines, like there's kind of like a script that I'm not following. It wasn't even taught the script, but I've grown more confident in that. That's not what you're supposed to do, right? But one good thing about being on the floor is there is a button that you can press just to speak, so it lights up. Because we know in certain environments, men are much more comfortable interrupting you, speaking over you. I've literally had the hand up in the air in front of you, told to stop. But at least, you just hope you look up at the speaker. I'm in the front row, gratefully, so I'm always looking at him like, did you see that? I pressed that button. Am I in the queue? But yeah, you just, you can't take it personally for sure. We have, I was on Capitol Hill during, does anybody remember the Packwood scandal and many others that I was proud to be part of an effort that created the Office of Compliance on Capitol Hill for these types of complaints and to address, and that's when training came in place. We don't have that in the New Jersey legislature. And I was just away with my family last week, and so I got privy of my husband's work calls. And they had an HR matter that they were dealing with, and it was sexual harassment and some other hostile issues. And I thought to myself, there's no HR in politics. There's no HR in politics, right? I am the chief executive officer, the chief human so when there's inappropriate stuff that occurs, like where do you go? And I think about that also, as a mother, I remember being on Capitol Hill thinking with Monica Lewinsky and all that came in, there was no work getting done. We were all glued to the screen on that one when the report came out. But I thought, I know by the time my daughter is maybe working on Capitol Hill or wherever she is in the workplace when she's 24 like me, this will all be behind us. So I think about that in terms of like, how am I going to make the change? So you just, I could go on and on. I don't know.
I think the message is you got to keep on keeping on. You have to have a clear sense of your goals and your vision, and no matter what is thrown at you, you just have to keep going.
Oh, if one more thing.
Yeah.
Because I was sharing just the other day. Does everybody remember the, I call it, I had my Kanye West moment. Do you remember when Kanye took the microphone out of Taylor Swift's hands when she was accepting the Grammy? I had one of those moments. I was literally mid-speaking, midway, and it was announced, Assemblywoman Dunn is here to speak. I was speaking, and then a man took the microphone away. I said, just to be clear, he's not the Assemblywoman, if anybody was, but okay, I guess I'll wait my turn. And, but you know, what keeps me strong, as I say, that is more a reflection of them than it will ever be of me. It doesn't diminish my power. As a matter of fact, it diminishes theirs. And why are you in office? And who are you serving? And what are you there for? You just have to stay focused on that. One of the reasons is actually to overcome that, for sure, but it's certainly not to serve them. So.
Yeah. We're getting such great life advice here. I love it. Mayor?
So I think on the municipal level, excuse me, our biggest impediment is social media, honestly. I find that is the hardest. Let me just take a drink here, sorry. You know, when people start trolling on social media and they say things that are wrong, just outright misinformation, that is really hard to navigate and not take personally. And how I dealt with one incident, somebody was trashing me about something with the road not getting paved properly. And I went up to their house and I knocked on the door. And they opened the door and they were like, oh, hi. And I said, do we need to talk? Let's sit down. And they couldn't have been nicer. You know, it's so easy to do this. Yeah. And I find I'm constantly putting out information. FAQs, FAQs, FAQs. You know, every time I see somebody say, did you know that, that, I will post under it, please read this FAQ. And I'll post it there. So that for me is, and also not taking anything personally that people say, that was hard for me. Like we're doing this development in town, and the rumor going around was that I was getting a free apartment in there. So my husband said to me, make sure it's a 3-bedroom. You know? But you know, those kinds of things. And the way I look at it is I think what people do is they ascribe to me what they would have done. You know, if they were doing this project, they probably would have looked for a payback. So they assume that I would do the same thing. So I kind of like you said, it's not about me. It's more about them. And so I try not to take things personally. You have to get a little bit of a thick skin when you're in office. But I think as long as you are, I am focused on why I'm there. You know, public service, as somebody said, I love this, public service is hard work, but public service is also heart work, H-E-A-R-T. And I love that because it is. If you're doing it for the right reasons, it's worth doing. I've had, you know, I find that my council people, a couple of the men, love to interrupt me. And I have to just, you know, I have to tell them, excuse me, I wasn't finished. And they stop, they go, oh. You know, but they get it. They like to, I think what I find, you know, with the women on council, they tend to, well, what do you think? What do you think? Or how about? Where the men are like, this is how it should be, and they keep saying it over and over because they want to win. They want their opinion to be, and so I stop them and I say, okay, we know what your opinion is. Let me ask the other two people what their opinion is. You know, let's make sure everybody gets to talk. And sometimes that's hard. But it's, you know, I think we've been doing it so long that we're all getting pretty good at it, I think, is finding our voice and knowing when we should open our mouths and speak up. I think we've been quieted for way too long, and it's time that we use our voice more. But it's all about caring. I think if you care enough and people see that, they ease up and they give you a little space. So, thank you.
I'll just expound on a little bit as mayors. I think we can relate. The biggest challenge and the thing I was probably most unprepared for was being a public figure. It never went into my consideration that I'd be a public figure and what that would mean for me and my family. And when you think about, if you ask kids in elementary school about elected officials, they typically know two: the President of the United States and the mayor of their town. And it really, I had lived in Westfield for 23 years at the time, and I wasn't prepared for how much it would change my relationship with my own community. I couldn't, my family refused to go out with me anymore. I couldn't go into town. I mean, not for people, I mean, for whatever reason. And I have some stories about, you know, and you're always on your P's and Q's because of social media. You're just waiting for someone to post a picture of you doing something remotely out of line. So oh yeah, but I gave up on that actually. I'm like, screw it. So I don't think I was, that took a real, and I'll be honest with you, stepping out, I'm very, very happy to be a private citizen again. But it kind of went back to why I wanted to run, why I ran in the first place. I had very specific problems I wanted to solve, and the only way you could do it is if you had the platform of being the mayor. And so, and that was really, really important. But there was a level of misogyny, which I honestly, I think I was just immune to at this point. My husband, who's not like the most enlightened guy in those regards, was like, oh my God, Shelley, I can't believe, there's a lot of misogyny. I mean, the NIMBY people that were really mad about some development we were doing put my head on the face of Godzilla, and I mean, that's just, I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the things. So you do, and I think it goes back, if, you know, I can't say, I don't want to discourage anybody from not running. You absolutely should run, but in this day and age, you have to run with the reason why. You have to know your why, because it is what will get you through all those things. And what I used to tell, you know, people that would get rattled by the incoming, as long as you are doing it for all the right reasons, with integrity. You know, people are always going to disagree with you. Just go. And one observation I'll make about the women leaders on council and those and the men, and I keep sorry for the men in the room, but women, I think, are driven by more community. Men are often driven by ego. And what I found, ironically, when people would come up to the mic and challenge things, the women on the council who were making those decisions on the benefit of the community had no problem pushing back and standing up to those people that were challenging them. The men, not so much. And they're driven more by ego. They took more of the criticism, like, oh my gosh, maybe this is going to impact my next election. So I found, for me, it only reinforced why women should be leading in all aspects of government.
Wanted to add something. I was in a 7th grade class for some experiment they were doing, and this boy looked up at me, and this is the 13, 14-year-old, and he goes, "You're the mayor?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "But you're a lady." You know? And then I've had people come up, you know, I'll be at an event, and somebody say, "Oh, there's the mayor," and I'll be with my husband, and they'll come over and reach out to him to shake his hand. They just assume that he's the mayor, you know?
Do you know, I got that on the Emmy red carpet. The first year I was nominated, me and my husband were posing on the red carpet, and people were going up to him. "Congratulations on your nomination." And I'm like, are you kidding? He's a finance guy. Like, he doesn't even want to be here. He's here because I forced him. So it's so funny that people just assume. Yeah. So obviously we're here for Impact 100. So I have a impact question for all of you. We have 15 minutes before we open it up to questions. I have some here in our cards being passed around so people can write if they want.
We have questions that some of you sent in advance, but if anybody has additional questions, just see Leah or I will give you a card. You can write it down.
Awesome.
Name, please.
So while that's happening, I want to ask each of you, what was your favorite impact moment while in office? I'll start with you.
Impact moment, meaning with this organization?
No. Making, like, your impact while in office. I mean, I know you're new.
I'm new.
But maybe there's something being in the works about to
There is. There's a few things in the works, actually, but my favorite moment so far, and I don't know if it can really be defined so much as a moment, but just I've only been here a moment, you know? So, like, honestly, everything so far is not lost on me, the absolute privilege it is to be in this position where I have an ability to make a change, like a change that is going to potentially affect all, I think it's 9 million or something people in the state of New Jersey. Like, it's an absolute honor to be, I'm still in a phase where it's surreal. And I feel, in a very good way, I feel the weight of this responsibility, and I'm going to take it very seriously. So although maybe not a moment by definition, I really have only been here so far a moment, and it's been nothing but amazing so far. I feel like the work, I'm just getting started. But like I said, I completely feel and understand and will never take for granted this position that I'm in and the privilege that it really is. And so long as you'll have me here, like, you're going to have my whole heart and everything that I have to give. So, for example, I'm in 3 different committees, and one of my committees just met for the very first time last Thursday. So, you know, I'm literally just getting started, but I have a lot of go energy, and I really can't wait to dive in. There are some things in the works that you will be hearing all about as I have more details and as I'm able to give them to you, and that's it. So my moment so far has really just been everything so far. Okay.
I will say that feeling doesn't change, right? You walk down those hallways and I always get the chills. I thought, Marissa, you might have said impact, right? It's kind of a key word right now. We're working on some of the school districts up in our district in Jefferson and West Milford have an impact aid coalition. So impact would be the theme here. But yeah, I guess I can't really narrow it down to one thing, right? Because, and it's maybe the key word is one, because at the end of the day, it's that making that difference one person at a time. So in legislative districts, we have about 250,000 residents. But what I love the most is that the constituent service work. And just yesterday, I got a case resolved that was over 28 months long. So if I share with you, so what does that mean? That means 2 different administrations, right? A military retiree is going to see, he's going to recoup his pension exemption that he was, it was just erroneously lost. And I think of, I told him, I said, I won't forget about this. I'm gonna take you all the way to the top. Like Sister Frances Cabrini used to say, I'm going to the mayor, I'm going to the Pope. I said, I'm going to the governor. And I did. I went to Governor Murphy, and they listened, and I even introduced legislation to ensure that this never happens. I said, this can't ever happen again. And actually just got some good news from under the new governor that he will see that reimbursement. But things like, just all the personal, that you really, we can improve lives, and in many cases, we've saved lives. If it's getting that, medication, or within a certain doctor, or can I do a shout out to an audience member, Joanne, with Family Promise, right? You know, you've been on the end of that helpline, that lifeline, because I just actually visited Family Promise yesterday, and I always say there's one of 2 reasons why a constituent reaches out to you. And the first is, I'm at the end of my rope. I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. What can I do? And so being able to give people that sense of hope, and also faith in who represents them and in their government, that's huge, because we know we're at a spot right now where we're at an all-time low of what people's opinions of their elected representatives. And the other is just, I don't know where to begin. So those are a little bit the easier calls, right, to issues to address. But I guess that's, for me, it's that one person at a time, one family at a time. Cool.
Mayor, your biggest impact?
That I got elected. I remember standing there going, I won? I'm the mayor? Really, that for me was a big deal. And some of the things, like I said, things work very slowly. So when you put in, like I put in 3 years to get Bernardsville designated as a transit village. It took so long and so much paperwork and back and forth. So when I got that phone call that, yes, you're one of 37 towns in New Jersey that's a transit village, that was just, yes. When something that you invest a lot of time in finally comes to fruition, it's so rewarding. And things do take long, but when they happen, it's such a good feeling. When you see that project get finished, it's just, and the other thing I love doing is weddings. I've done 32 weddings so far. That's my joy. It just lifts me up to do that. And ribbon cuttings, they're always fun too. Seeing things happening downtown, when it's taken so long, and you probably have the same experience, when you start to see the growth and you start to see the change happening, it just lifts you up like nothing else can. So it's just there's so many of those moments. So
I love that. That's
thank
a great
you.
answer. I would be into the ribbon cuttings and weddings too. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It is.
I have two, and they're probably part of the same thing, and I talked about this in my final remarks as mayor. There's the laundry list of things that you want to check off that I'm very proud of. Lowest tax rate, highest surplus, all those, paved every single road in town, which was unbelievable. But actually the things that I think will have the most lasting are more cultural. And this also goes into one of the other reasons I ran for mayor, besides revitalizing our downtown, is that there are a lot of people in my community that felt invisible. And if you ask people like what the perception was of Westfield, and I say this also as someone who'd lived there a long time, it was a town full of white finance, corporate executives, and that's the way it was. And quite frankly, it's one of the reasons I was never really involved in town, because I didn't feel like I belonged there. And so I ran also to bring a more inclusive spirit to our town, to make everybody feel like they belonged. And so two things that I did that I'm really incredibly proud of that I think will be hopefully a lasting impact was we had a very vibrant African American professional community that was in Westfield in the 50s and 60s. And there's incredibly vibrant history in our town. Both Langston Hughes and Paul Robeson lived in Westfield for a while. So we started an African American historical tour, and my daughter actually built the website for them to create all these markers. And it's now every year during African American History Month, we run a trolley tour to all these incredible markers, from slaves that were buried in our cemetery to the professional district that once was, and we unveiled a mural of Paul Robeson and Langston Hughes in a very prominent part of town. And we renamed actually a traffic circle based upon the suggestion from a fourth grader in town, the Martin Luther King Memorial Circle. So she asked why there were no MLK streets in Westfield, and I was like, I don't know why aren't there, and we made one. The second thing on that same thing is Westfield had never raised the pride flag in its history either. So the first year we raised the pride flag for the first time, and I had families and honestly kids in their 20s that came back that and tears in their eyes, talking about how they never felt they were part or welcome in the community, or they couldn't be their whole selves. So during COVID, we didn't seem, when flags were at half staff, it didn't seem appropriate to be raising a flag when we were dealing with so much. So instead, we worked with the high school and the middle school clubs and art teachers and everything else, and they came out on Pride Month at 4 in the morning, and they painted rainbow crosswalks right in the heart of our downtown, and we posted it, and people woke up to this very vibrant piece in our downtown. It's probably one of the most popular things we've ever done in Westfield. If you come downtown, you'll see the high school groups just repainted them, and it has changed, I think, the spirit and the outlook of our community about who belongs there. So those are the two, really, the mural and the rainbow crosswalks. I felt like that's when you've made a cultural difference in your community that hopefully will last way beyond our tenure here. So
That's awesome. Well, we've gotten so many amazing questions from the audience. Like, we can go on for another 3 hours here. Laura Jennings Pitt, where are you? I love this question because this applies in everything, so I can't wait to ask it. So Laura asks, In my own leadership role, I have found communication to be the biggest challenge. We use social media, email, flyers, and people still say, "Oh, I didn't know." How do you make sure your constituents are informed and aware? Whoever wants to take that. You're shaking your head.
Well, because you just you never get ahead of it, right? You're never, and especially in the world we're in now. You talked about the media landscape. You know, we're not all glued to the 6 p.m. news that we we got the same news. So it's just trying. You can't miss any kind of medium, really. Which of course, that takes money, right? And just. I don't know. It's constant. I don't struggle for content, but it's about how to get it out there. And I'll be honest here. I didn't have a Facebook page until I ran for office. I was fine not being in the Facebook world, but you kind of have to. Yeah. And you see where that really it's like insatiable, right? The feeling that you always have to be. And then now it's Instagram and TikTok, you know, providing, I do a newsletter to the constituents, but something different. It's not built in. Your audience, you don't have all these emails or anything. You have to, unlike, I remember on Capitol Hill, we had more of that. We had that resource to be able to reach out to the constituency, not in, not down in Trenton.
No, but you know, having a media company, we face the same thing because we're streaming. We're very accessible, but it's how can people find us? And you have to reach out to people across all of those platforms, like you said, email. Everyone's consuming media and information at their own individual level. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. But the good old, we still take phone calls. We still have a fax in the office, so and walk-ins. How about that? 60 Washington Street, Suite 303. Love visitors. But it's just you just have to be and we don't have replicas, right? We have to be everywhere. But I just wanted to talk. But communication is where I think where women are just more naturally talented in that area. I'm sorry, Tom.
We keep insulting them.
And that's what it's about, right? And I feel many ways my responsibility is to be that educator, to first educate the constituency, inform them, and we come together, and then to advocate on their behalf. So I know it's a constant. I didn't see Route 80 and sinkholes coming when I first ran for office. And I knew potholes would be. I know potholes are always part of government service, but the biggest pothole ever is sinkholes on Route 80. And I was wondering if you noticed the billboard because you were stuck in Route 80 traffic.
Yeah, no, I wasn't.
No, all right, because I was trying to measure the effectiveness of billboards, because actually that's somewhere where we haven't spent. I say it's kind of costly, but yeah, just people have come back and thanked me for we didn't know where else to find the information, but thank you for keeping us up to date.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is knowing which audience you're trying to reach. And how they get their news, because there's so much out there. We're just inundated with information constantly. And like, for an example, we were trying to get our senior community together for an event. And 4, 10, 16 would show up. We could never get, what we did? Snail mail. Because that's what they, to get an invitation in the mail was what got to them. That was what they identified with it. That's how they want to get their information. So it's really kind of knowing each segment and how they respond. Is it a text? Is it email? Sometimes sending everything to everybody, they miss the whole thing. So I find it works better narrowing it down. I try and do a newsletter every month, but people don't read a lot anymore, So I make it very succinct with links. You can find more here, you can find more here, because I find even I don't read as much, like I'm scanning all the time. So I think just knowing your audience and what it is that they identify with, which media they want. That's
And also house calls, right?
yes, knocking on the door.
We do house calls.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have something you want?
No, I was just going to say, the only position I insisted on when I came into office was hiring a public information officer. And it's probably the most transferable skill from HBO, which was what I think was going to be the most transferable, was communication and understanding media and how that works. And I would totally agree, you have to meet people where they are. I was very fluent in social media when I started because that's the world I came from. And one thing that happened during COVID, I sent out a daily newsletter every day at 7 o'clock, giving everybody an update on cases, where they were. And actually, it went around the state. And they said people were begging. People want information, especially in times of crisis, because it makes them feel at least someone's in control. And so I felt my role as mayor was by providing as much information as possible. Like, don't worry, I got this, so you don't have to. And so I created this daily newsletter, which then got up to thousands and thousands of people. They were calling it the Brindle newsletter. I was hearing it from all over, and it built a following. And so it ended up doing a weekly newsletter after that. And I think people have gotten so accustomed to reading it. But I agree. It depends on what your initiative is. If we're trying to do something around fields, let's just say, we would engage the sports community to be the communication arm for us in that regard. So I think you have to get really targeted and find ambassadors in those particular groups that are interested in that piece of information, and let them be the mouthpiece for you to help direct them to the resources where you can find it.
I love that you guys all became your own media companies. Yeah. Because besides on New Jersey, Tom, and a few others, there's not a lot of people covering the state now. It's a big, big issue. And in New Jersey, PBS might be going away. We'll see about that, maybe. And but News 12 has consolidated. 10 years ago, they were out in the local communities. Now they've consolidated their coverage, where they're pulling from their other studios in Connecticut and Brooklyn, and which is great, as a cost savings to them. But now Jersey lost such a big piece of the media landscape. So kudos to you all for recognizing that. I love this question. You ran for student office, right, when you were in school, and you lost.
I lost, yeah.
And I lost in high school. It's look at us now, right? Anyway, so I don't know who submitted this because they didn't put their name, but they want to know, were you all leaders in high school? And I just love this question because I feel like the answers are not going to be what you think they are.
Well, it all depends on how you look at it, maybe. I think this is probably what got me into owning my own small business. I don't really do so well with people telling me what to do. So I wasn't the best student. I really wasn't. And it was just for lack of. I couldn't sit still. I didn't want to hear anything anybody had to say. I didn't have the patience for anything. And I was I was way more concerned with my friends, and I played sports. I was really into soccer. I was a very serious soccer player.
Where did you go?
I grew up in Brick High School. And I just didn't, it was a format, the classroom format of sitting there and having somebody just lecture you, just never really worked out for me. And I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to anyway. So there was 350 people in my graduating class, and my class rank was 175, smack in the middle. So, and there was part of me, in hindsight, that really wished that I took it more seriously. But I never doubted, if there's anything that I do have faith in, it's my ability to work my ass off. And that's really, I think, what led me into small business, is I wanted to be the director of my own creative project. I wanted to be able to steer my own ship. I wanted to be able to lead the work that I wanted to do. So it didn't come from a place of laziness. It just came from a place of absolute uninspiration is what it was. And actually during COVID, at the height of COVID, when everything was closed, the wellness center in Morristown that I have was closed for a year and a half, meaning the physical location. It was tons of virtual stuff. it was a lot more downtime than I was used to, and I was thinking, like, maybe this is a great time for me to go back to school and get my master's degree. Like, I did go to Montclair State University, and again, it was mostly because my parents kind of shoved me into it, and I still didn't really take it like that seriously, and it wasn't until I really found nutrition and dietetics, I took it as an elective, that I was like, this is everything I want. And it actually came from just an elective class that I took, where they showed us a documentary of all the efforts to alleviate food insecurity amongst the homeless in Philadelphia. I was like, this is everything I want to do. And I had a lot of regrets of not taking it seriously, and my grades were kind of crappy. I had to retake a lot of classes and everything. So at the height of COVID, I was like, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to do it right this time. And I applied to Northeastern University. They had a whole online program long before COVID, actually. It's no less rigorous, I promise you, these online programs, than the in-person stuff. And I was shocked that they even accepted me, because I always kind of grew up with this. I was the person giving my teachers problems and then getting frustrated with me for not applying myself and like just being concerned with other things. And I got a 4.0 in my master's. I was like, I can't believe I did this. And there was one professor that was like, you should go for your PhD. You should really do that. I was like, get out of here. I was like, that's crazy. And he's like, no. He's like, and to this day, even him saying this to me, it was crazy. He was like, you're one of the most prolific writers I've ever had. And he's like, you're a great student. You have great ideas. He's like, wherever you want to go, you don't have to get your PhD here. I'll write you a letter of recommendation. And I was floored. I was like, this can't be real. Like, I've never had that kind of like positive relationship with teachers. And he did, and then I finished my PhD with a 3.9. Wow. So the moral, maybe the moral of that story is that you can reinvent yourself at any time. I always grew up with this feeling I'm a bad student, school's not for me, I'm not into academia. And it wasn't until kind of later, somebody mentioned, I think you did, about being a late bloomer. It wasn't until I really found my passion that I was then ready to apply myself, and then I went back and I proved it to myself that I could do it. So.
The life advice we've gotten here today has been extraordinary. And I knew this question would get a lot of great answers. Anybody else want to jump in with that one?
So the question was,
were you a leader in high school?
So I would say no. If anyone, to kind of get comfortable with that, right? I didn't see myself as a leader. I went to a magnet high school, so kids came from all over the borough of Brooklyn. And there was just 4 of us that took the B6 to Midwood High School. And it was Despina Lukakis, whose dad owned the Greek diner, Eunice Rowe, whose parents owned the dry cleaner, Antoinette, whose dad was a laborer. She was the first to speak English in her household. And then Aura. And we were just so the high school that I was zoned for had the second highest dropout rate in the entire city. So my father was like, we're going to see if there's other options for you. And so I applied to the magnet high school, and I got in. And it really changed the trajectory of my life, really, having those exposures. But I remember that, so I brought up Despina and all, they were like excellent students. I was in the humanities program. They had like a medical science program. That wasn't for me. I was in humanities. And I remember their faces dropped, and we were sitting in the back of the bus, and I said, I think I want to join the cheerleading squad. And they were like, you cannot do that. You can't represent us in our community by being a cheerleader. I'm like, of course I can. So there was a little bit of a rift there, but and I became a cheerleader. But I guess what I'm saying is, they looked up to me, right? They had certain expectations of me. So did I have a formal role? Was I ever in the student government? And I was always the new kid. I look back, and by the time I was in the 6th grade, I had moved 14 different times. So sometimes I was in a different school twice a year. So you weren't coming in and being the leader. But I remember asking my father once, because he put a lot on me to get my younger sisters off to school, and I said, you know, I'm not that much older than them, and why am I doing that? And he said, because you can. That was that you can, and you got to do what you got to do, right? So, but I will say, I remember, Mary Jane, you talked about when you were a child and what you were, the roles that you would kind of fill. And I learned this from a child psychologist. They say, ask your mom what you were so enthralled in when you were 7 years old, that, you know, when it's time for dinner or it's time to go do something else that they just couldn't pull you away from. That usually is kind of where you say where your talents are and your interests. So Steven Spielberg, apparently he could never let that camera down at the age of 7. I worked with Kevin Clash, who was the voice of Elmo. And he said every chance he could get, he'd gotten a lot of trouble, actually. He cut out the lining of his dad's jacket to make a puppet. So we're all leaders in that regard, right?
Yeah. I was not a leader in high school. I was always in the group that was the leaders, but I was kind of the support staff, you know? I did, when I went to County College of Morris, I was on the student government there, but it was because we were so small. There weren't that many of us, so we all kind of played a part. And I was editor of the newspaper, but not really in, you know, that involved at a younger age. It was just, you know, when you get that feeling that you need to do something, you'll do it. You know, that's what you just have to step up when you get that feeling that there's an opportunity now to be a leader.
Well, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
And you really gain nothing by peaking at 17, right? You got to like build towards something. So, would you like to add anything, Shelley?
I was the treasurer of my high school class, but I don't know if that really would count. I don't know. You can conflate. I don't perceive myself as a leader. I think I was always considered a master of, a jack of all trades, master of none, probably. But I was always pretty bossy and opinionated. So maybe that's always been consistent. So how that evolved as an adult, I think, is here today.
So I cannot believe this. We have like 3 minutes. This like went by. Did you guys all have fun, by the way? Awesome. Is anyone in the audience thinking of a life in public office, or even just mulling over like a life change, like, oh, maybe I want to start my own business, or yeah, you do. So a lot of hands, okay, great, are going up. So I want to leave you all with some words of wisdom, parting words of wisdom by our esteemed panelists here. I will start with you. What is your advice for women looking to make a change in their life and going after their passions?
I just, I bet on yourself. That's all I could say. And oftentimes we don't have the courage. But I was passionate about the women business owners in my town because I saw in them maybe something I never did myself. And these were women that oftentimes left the workforce because they were frustrated about opportunities that weren't available to them and have bet on themselves, have been very successful. So I'd say no one else is going to do it for you. Just bet on yourself and go for it. And if you have the courage of your convictions and your vision, it will lead you to where you're supposed to be. So that would be my parting advice.
I would say don't take yourself too seriously. Really, I mean, you have to have fun with it. If you're not enjoying it, it's not feeding you, don't do it. I think people want to know that you really care. So being honest, being genuine is probably the most important. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try and act like, the man who was the mayor, Just be yourself, and people will see that, and they will follow.
That's great advice. So you hear a lot about that. Well, that's not how it was done, or this is how it was. So I actually brought a little something, because I read this to Girl Scouts that are getting their Eagle Scout. And I actually was so proud to be part of recognizing the first girls to become Eagle Scouts in the state of New Jersey. It was on my son's birthday. That was a lot of pressure, but I made it to both. To the women who are labeled aggressive, keep being assertive. Bossy, keep on leading. I like to say, we just have better ideas. It's not bossy. Difficult, keep telling the truth. Too much, keep taking your space. Complicated, keep asking hard questions.
I would say piece of advice if you're thinking about running for office is, and I touched on this a little bit before, make your peace with the fact that you might lose. That's the worst possible outcome, right? All things considered. Make your peace with it. And so if you lose, then your life will move on, you know? Don't have it be your entire identity that's poured into it. And I think that really clears the way for you then to go all in, you know? You're going to be doing yourself a disservice if you kind of have one foot in and then you're finding that maybe your insecurities are kind of holding you back a little bit. Make your peace with the fact that you might lose. And it doesn't have to be the end of all your political efforts or your political career if you happen to lose. There's other positions that are going to come up. There's other opportunities that are going to find you or you find it. So like a good analogy that I like to think of is that fear is always going to be a passenger in the ride, right? But just have it be a passenger. Don't have it take the wheel. You have the wheel. And let fear sit in that passenger seat with you. It's guaranteed to be with you as you're doing something risky, as you're taking a chance on something. And then keep on keeping on.
Well, thank you all. I hope you had fun today. I hope you had fun. Thank you, everyone, for attending.